Hello, gorgeous! My name is Gia G. Dixon. If you have not been following me, I post high quality living and elegant style. Subscribe and click the bell if that's your thing. Give this a like so that more people find this and it tells the YouTube gods to look down on me with favor. For those of you who do not know, I am from Los Angeles. I'm from Southern California. I grew up in Orange County. If you've ever seen Laguna Beach or the OC, that's Southern Orange County. That's a really posh area. Where I'm from Northern Orange County, where Disneyland is, a town called Anaheim. This is kind of a warning about the things that are changing in California and have been changing for a very long time. And I did not know this as a kid because my parents put me in a nice area. I was surrounded by other hardworking immigrants who made their way to be middle class or upper middle class. And I'm really lucky, and my parents, who are immigrants, were very grateful for everything they had in California. My dad would brag to me saying, "You're the first generation who has California as their home, who can say that in our family." And I thought, holy moly, this is a big deal. California is special to me. The United States is in general. The American dream. That American dream is going away for Californians because over 1 million, I think it's like 1.5 million now, have absconded essentially and left their lives in that state because Conrad Newsom is the #1 U-Haul salesman. There are many reasons. I'm gonna get into this. This is not to be politicized. This is not a political video. This is simply what's going on and why I left. Personally, it's not to comment on we need to change this, and this. This is simply saying, here are the things I noticed. Here is what I've observed, and here is how it has changed over time. So I actually spent my adult life, lived in Hollywood Hills. My husband worked in Beverly Hills at the hospital, at the largest hospital, I think, in the United States. Los Angeles is a place with really good schools, and it's a wonderful place to live because of the weather. You can't throw a rock without hitting someone creative. But I now live here in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and you'll see more vlogs coming out where my husband and I are actually looking at parcels of land and a house on top of it, and then we'll build another house from scratch on here, where you can't do that in California. So #1 issue is the cost. So cost of living. And note that I have also lived in Copenhagen in Denmark, in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And my husband is from England, so I'm used to things being expensive in London. I'm used to drinks being around $30 in California, in Los Angeles. So I would never go out, and that's also what glamorized staying in and being comfortable watching Netflix, because people would grab a $2 chuck or a $2 bottle of wine from Trader Joe's, and then they would become in-house alcoholics, is what we call them. So the tax is insane, and the tax cost is going up. Fuel is going up, obviously, all over the world. But in California specifically, the whole rest of the United States, it went from $2 to $4, and then went back down a little bit to I think like $2 or $3, depending on what state you went to. Say, for example, I visited Texas for my birthday. Gas was $2 and something cents. All I saw was the $2, and my mind was blown, because where I lived in Hollywood Hills, and if I would visit the valley I would drive out of the way to look for cheaper places to get gas, and it was $7 something. So gas was going up to $9 in different parts of Los Angeles, and it's crazy because they were taxing the fuel companies. And a house down payment is a mansion in so many other states of the United States. I'm just hopping in here for all my younger viewers, or the people who don't have a house yet or don't understand how to purchase a house. So please excuse my messy office. I'm doing a lot today, but I'm gonna break it down really simply for you. I also invest in real estate. If you buy a house, you're probably gonna pay a down payment of say 20%, depending on the property, depending on the state, depending on all these different factors. But 20% is a really good amount to put down. If you want to pay off your house even faster, you can up the percentage to 30 to pay cash in that sense. If you have a $300,000 house, to put 20% down, you'll have $60,000 ready to pay off. But then every month you have a payment, which is called a mortgage. This is why renting is doomed. You should not rent, and you should own, because the government also wants you to own, because the pensions will have to be bigger, and they want to incentivize citizens to eventually own property. And in Kentucky, a lot of people own their own land. This means that they can run their own generators, they can have solar power, they can have their own water. Sometimes they have their own wells, so their water bill is like $17 for the whole family of 5 people. You can grow your own crops if it's arable. My husband's coworker has a dairy farm, and I think he retired really early. His kids are exhausted of eating New York strip steak every single night because they have a dairy farm. Or in California, a down payment on a house is the cost of the total house here in Kentucky. So a lot of middle America just gets it. And the people here who have a ton, they don't flex it like in California where people have a tiny space. They might have an indoor gym, they might have an indoor pool, they might have an indoor this and that and movie theater. But here in Kentucky, people can build their houses wide and far as long as they want, and they can play outside, sit in the sun, where people in California, no matter how glamorous something is, you're still gonna be cramped in the tiny city. It's gonna be very expensive, highly taxed, and it's gonna be very small. I was never impressed back in Los Angeles when people had a tiny $5 million place in Beverly Hills. I was impressed here more where people have a lot, but they're not flexing it on Instagram or anything. But if you want to be young and be a bit more in the city, you can do that. But a lot of people want to be in Hollywood industry, but it's really hard to break into. First off, you have to know someone, and even when you do know someone, even when you do have a lot of money, it doesn't always work out in your favor. Every time my husband and I watch shows with people trying to buy an investment property, they say, we're gonna purchase a place in California for $250,000, and we look at each other laughing because we know it's gonna be a miserable shed. I just googled $200,000 house in Los Angeles, and what came up were houses that were an hour to 2 hours outside Los Angeles. So I guess they just don't exist anymore, which is really sad, because the last time my husband and I checked house prices in Los Angeles in that range, it was 3 years ago. It was still doable then, but it was still an $800,000 house for a tool shed. Taxes, cost of living in general. I remember when I first had my Prius, it was $30 to fill up my tank. Suddenly in 2 years, it became $50. And then after that, I stopped going out to drive, would go to places with my husband in his Tesla. Everyone was sort of fooled into thinking that they're saving the planet and saving money on fuel when getting a Tesla, because now California is cracking down on charging for all of the types of chargers. That is going to be a bit more mandated. I'm getting the feeling they're going to pull a Norway, and then so many people are going to have access to a certain lane. It's going to be full of traffic all over again, so they kind of have to start from scratch, and all the old rules applied, and nobody's treated with any specialty. And the thing is, you get a rebate, and it's subsidized with tax dollars that poor people pay it for, because poor people or any working class people who cannot afford a Tesla are giving you that money through their tax dollars, which is crazy. And then fuel prices were going up, and if you used over a certain amount, and same with your water, you were charged $1,000 a fine if you went over your ration of fuel or water in California. I was so infuriated and scared to go out, because also the second issue that I'm going to mention here is the homeless people. There are so many homeless people on drugs. People think that all homeless people are very mild-mannered and kind, and they're just down on their luck. There is no one answer for homeless people. It's not like you can say one thing to fix everybody's problem when it comes to the homeless being abandoned with our taxes. And when you consider that the taxpayer in California, no matter how much tax you pay or how many good jobs you have, homeless people on the other hand get to live for free on the concrete that we pay for, and they make $1,700 a month. In New York, I know they make about $800 a month. I would go to the grocery store, or I would go to the bank in midday, say like 10 a.m. Not only am I staying at a rush hour where I am getting in other people's way and causing their commute to be even longer, I deliberately also went out in midday because it's nice and bright, because I have been mugged at gunpoint. I realized once the sun sets, or once people start going home from work, don't bother about going to the bank. Don't bother about going to get groceries. Go in the midday on a weekend, on a weekday with my husband. I would be screamed at by all of these homeless people, screaming obscenities at me, and there would be 4 of them at a time. I would go in the daytime. Sometimes I would call the cops. The cops are so fed up with the homeless people because they are burning down people's houses. They're burning down people's businesses and livelihoods. I know a handful of them. Police do not respond to homeless people calls in Los Angeles anymore. They have needles that they poke at cops, and I feel really bad for cops because they have to touch these people even with their gloves. They're full of disease. My husband's jiu-jitsu classmate was bitten by a person, and you can get some serious diseases long term because all the bacteria in your teeth, and they have tons of other diseases and bleeding gums, and you don't know what they have. It's really scary. And say there are 4 strange people who are yelling at me, and then I would describe what they look like to dispatch, and they say, okay, I can't stay on the phone with you very long. I have to keep the line open for people who are really in need. I'll stay on with you for 1 minute. That's it, so run to your car. So I would find myself getting chased down the street just to get to my car and make sure that I had everything on me, my keys, my phone, everything. When I would go outside, I would never have a bag. I would never have any jewelry. You know, there was a huge problem because on the news, they were saying, don't wear jewelry when you go out. Don't wear anything nice when you go out because you're gonna be accosted, essentially, and which is not funny. It's really scary. I deliberately dressed very unflatteringly with a big blue shirt, my husband's sweater, really ugly sneakers, and some straight jeans that are that don't show off my figure or anything, no makeup, and people still approach you and flirt with you and follow you home. And then my hands are shaking at the end, and I call 911 or I call my husband, and they say, just keep doing this, keep your mind. You have no idea how many calls I've had like that, where I was panicking or didn't know what to do because weird things happen. And not necessarily it's all the time by homeless people. If you see a person on a bike and they're trying to talk to you and they're not a kid, don't talk to them, ignore them, keep walking, because people who have licenses, people who have the ability to get a car, they are usually upstanding civilians who have the right registry, the right paperwork for their car. Usually big cities, big metropolitan areas are full of all kinds of people. You can't say one thing for all, obviously. Now I'm living in a smaller town where I can actually own land where it's possible. People are genuinely kind here. Also, that's gonna be number 3. People are extremely rude. Even in the building that I lived, it was a small complex. The last place was a house, but then before that was a small complex. That was a luxury apartment, and everybody had a good job. A majority of the people had children. Every now and again, I would go down to get the mail, and I would see my neighbor, and I would say hello or good day. They would look at me like I was crazy, or every now and again, you see someone say, "What?" Sometimes they don't say anything, and they'll look at you up and down, and then they walk past you. People are very, very rude. In the city, nobody cares because there's so many people, but here in the countryside, everybody is extremely kind. This is the best service I've ever had in my life outside of a Michelin rated star in London. I think it's because it's a smaller town, so there's more accountability. Iceland, for example, they all know each other, so a lot of people are related. So if it's a legitimate excuse, if you're late to work, to say, sorry, I was talking to this person, I bumped into them, you have to talk, you have to have that good exchange, because it makes a bad community. Here, people are just so down to earth and normal, not pretending to be something they're not. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you have visited California, and what you guys think about the rest of the United States, if you live in the rest of the United States, which I absolutely love. I think that's what truly makes America, because remember, there are 50 states. It is huge. Kentucky, here it's a little bit of New England, it's a little bit of the Appalachians, a little bit of the Midwest, and a little bit of the South. It's definitely older because it becomes very, very different a few miles you go, where in California, a lot of culture is very, very similar no matter where you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.